In the past week, I've had 5 men reach out to me in some kind of state of emergency. There was a crisis going on. And out of the 5, 4 were at a point where they were pretty much ready to throw in the towel and just, I've had it. I can't do this anymore. I give up. So I know you probably heard us talk about this. I think we talked about it last week, but I just want to reiterate something that is not always the case, but something to be aware of. I call it the lower scale, and that's an acronym. And it starts with when we leave God out. That's where it starts. And this scale only goes down. It never goes up. When we leave God out, the result is we feel overwhelmed because we have this mentality that it's all up to us. If it's going to be, it's up to me. And so now we're the higher power for this area of our life. This could be our addiction. This could be IAD. This could be our relational recovery. This could be whatever. But we've left God out. That leaves it up to us. And we quickly become overwhelmed. And so what's our response? We work harder. I'm going to go to more meetings. I'm going to do the steps again. I'm going to have double appointments with my therapist. I'm going to talk to my sponsor every day. I'm going to talk to 5 guys a day. I'm just going to put more effort and I'm going to go faster. I'm going to hit the accelerator, and I'm just going to give it my all. And I'm all in. It's 100%. I'm going to make this work. And that leads to exhaustion. And once we're in a place of exhaustion, there's one of 3 R's that typically happen. The first is what 4 of the guys were feeling this week. And that is what I'm going to call resign. I give up. I throw in the towel. I can't do this anymore. I'm just worn out. I'm empty. I'm spent. White flag. I give up. Okay. Second possibility on the R is what we're going to call resentment. And that is, I have worked my butt off and I am resentful that it hasn't moved the needle, that it hasn't worked, that I haven't seen enough progress. Or final R, this can lead to a relapse where it's another form of resignation. It's kind of a form of resentment where we eroticize our anger, we sexualize our anger. I'm pissed, I give up, I might as well just go act out. So 4 of the guys that I talked to this week were kind of right here. One was right here. Fortunately, I'm not aware of any that relapsed. And I'm not passing judgment. We all get on the lower scale. It may or may not be what happened for these particular men. But if you find yourself in one of the 3 R's, see if you're on the scale. Have I left God out? Am I acting as a functional atheist, as if there is no God? Have I compartmentalized my life? And basically what I've told God is, for this particular area, I've got this. Yeah. That phrase should never be uttered from our lips. I've got this. But that's what we do. You helped me with my addiction over here, but my relationship here, I've got this. So when we leave God out, when we're not practicing that conscious contact, that desperate dependence on a power greater than ourselves to do for us what we can't do for ourselves, it leads to overwhelm, working harder, exhaustion, and one of the 3 R's. We either resign, we're full of resentment, or we relapse. So I wanted to point that out just as an intro before we get into the content today. So what I want to talk about today is what I'm going to call shaping. And so what I mean by this, and let me see if I can even spell this word, unintentional shaping. Okay. And this is going to have 3 elements to it. So I'm just going to draw a triangle here. And the first element, change colors, are the stories that we tell ourselves. We can generate stories in a split second. So these are the stories that we're telling ourselves, followed by the habits that we keep and the attachments that we have. And basically, over time, this leads to personal experiences, okay? So when you put all these together, this unintentionally, unconsciously is shaping who we're becoming. With personal experiences over time, based upon the stories we're telling ourselves, the habits we're keeping, and the attachments we have in our life, this is unconsciously, unintentionally kind of going on cruise control. This is shaping the man that we're becoming. There's no real intent behind it, but these are the elements that are part of our formation. It's part of our spiritual formation. It's part of our character. It's part of our integrity or lack of. This is our development. This is our shaping. So when it comes to this, let's start with stories. What I mean by stories is oftentimes this refers to what we call root work. What happened to you between age 6 and 16, and especially what we call the 3 I's of shame. So what we're talking about here is, who have you been told that you are during those formative years of 6 to 16? Who were the significant others in your life? What were the impactful events? What were the patterns of behavior that were done to you? What was said to you, done to you? What are the big impact items during those formative years that continue to craft the stories that you tell yourself today? This could also be called scripts or self-talk. What do you catch yourself saying to yourself? And is it full of shame in one of the 3 categories of shame that we call the 3 I's? And we've talked about this many times, but just in case this is unfamiliar with you, shame shows up in 3 ways: insignificance, incompetence, or imprisonment, especially during formative years 6 to 16. Those messages of shame, who we were told that we are: you're stupid, you're a failure, you're not enough, you're rejected, you're not accepted, you don't fit in, you're incompetent, you're a failure, you always screw up, you can't do anything right, you're not wanted, whatever those messages were, what we began to tell ourselves. Some attachment in our life said this to us, we adopted it as our mantra, and now it's the story we tell ourselves. Is it insignificance, that I'm not enough? Or is it incompetence, I don't have what it takes? Or is it imprisonment, I have no power, I have no agency, I can't affect change, I'm stuck, it's hopeless, it's helpless? Is that showing up for you? And is that still happening in the self-talk? Because that is shaping who you are. When you put all these together, this is your environment. And so SHAPE, stories, habits, attachments, personal experiences, and all this together is your environment, shaping who you are and who you're becoming. So what are the scripts? What's the self-talk? What's the stories that you're telling yourself? Especially coming from episodes, events, and impact in your life between ages 6 and 16. And how are the 3 I's showing up for you? I'm insignificant, I'm incompetent, I'm in prison right now. So that's the first thing that's shaping you. The second thing we want to talk about is habits. And so these are often ways of escaping or numbing our stories. So these kind of overlap and influence each other. And so the question here is, what am I telling myself? Or who have I been told that I am and I believed it? The question here is, how am I spending my time? And am I medicating myself from the stories? The uncomfortable emotions that I'm experiencing because of these scripts, how am I escaping through the habits that I keep? So this can be sometimes innocuous, innocent things like fantasy football. I start looking at all the stats, I start trading players, I start looking at the draft, and really get caught up. And this is my way of escaping the stories that I'm telling myself. Not necessarily bad, but understanding that this is part of shaping who we are and who we're becoming. Maybe it's scrolling mindlessly on social media. Maybe it's becoming a gymaholic. Maybe it's I medicate myself with chips, ice cream, junk food, sweets, as a way to numb out from the stories that I tell myself. And so these are the habits that I formed. My waistline's getting bigger because of these habits, and this is literally physically shaping who I'm becoming. This can be media. This can be music. This can be movies. This can be consuming the news. What we need to understand is that our media is saturated with man box thinking, the collective socialization of what a real man is. And so in a unintentional, unconscious way, we may be indoctrinating ourselves in this environment through what we're consuming in our media to have a certain story about women, about sex, about what it means to be a man, about ourselves, about masculinity, that's actually quite toxic. And so how are we spending our time, and which habits are we engaging in to soothe or to react to the stories that we're telling ourselves? So some of you may look at this and you say, well, what I can say is all I do is recovery. That's all I do. I don't have any hobbies. I don't have any habits. I'm doing 90 meetings in 90 days. I'm doing the steps. I'm seeing a therapist. I've got a coach. I'm all I do is recovery. That is my habit. That's my life. That's all I do. Well, let's reflect on that for a moment. First of all, that's probably not true. Let's be honest with our inventory. We addicts are prone to grandiosity and exaggeration and overspeech and victim mentality. So reflect on that for a moment. Is that really all you do? And if that's true, if that's 90% of what you're doing is just recovery related, recovery related, recovery related, recovery related, are you getting any mileage out of that with the stories you're telling yourself? Or is it moving the needle at all? Busy work doesn't mean that you're actually intentionally shaping the person that you're becoming. Sitting in a meeting doesn't necessarily shape you. And so how are the activities, the habits, even the recovery tasks that you're engaged in, how are they addressing the unhealthy stories, scripts, and self-talk that you're still engaging in? And then there's attachments, and these can be healthy or unhealthy. But this is, who do you interact with on a consistent basis? Who do you spend time with? And the question is this: is it helping or is it hurting? That's the question. Because we are heavily influenced by who we interact with and who we spend time with. So what are those attachments right now in your life? And are they helping or are they hurting? So let me share an example. And this, I hope if there's any, I hope none of the men weaponize this. I'm so reluctant to share this, but it is part of my story. I hope none of the men weaponize this. I hope none of the women are terrified by this. This is just me, okay? There were some 12-step groups that I had to stop going to. And I haven't been in years because they weren't helpful. Because what was being shared every week in those groups were men who were engaging in lust and objectification of some kind, but they were minimizing it and calling it slips, calling it edging, or just calling it middle circle behavior. And it was, for me, that environment was normalizing the objectification of women. And I did not want to lose my sense of being appalled at that, being offended by that, rejecting that. I did not want that to be socialized and normalized. And so there were some meetings that were not helpful. Those attachments were not helpful. That is not the environment. That is unintentionally shaping the stories I'm saying to myself about women and about lust and objectification. And I'm trying to renew my mind in that area. I'll never forget 3 years ago when I made the commitment to declare war on lust and objectification in my life, and I wanted it gone, and I didn't want to go back to it. And I actually stated that intention in a 12-step meeting. And what I heard from the messages from those attachments, the stories that were being shared with me, was things like this: Roy, you're being too hard on yourself. God made us visual creatures. Everyone engages in lust. Is that a realistic goal for you? And this was not helpful. In fact, this was quite hurtful. And so, yeah, maybe there's a lot of activity, recovery activity going on, and you're forming some attachments in those. How is it affecting your stories? How is it shaping you? Just because you're involved in a lot of busy work doesn't mean that it's shaping you in the right direction. It doesn't mean that every attachment, every meeting, every interaction is helpful, but it is part of your environment and it is shaping you, whether you're conscious of it or not, whether it's intentional or not. Some of you've had to distance yourself from unhealthy family members because they're not helpful, they're hurtful, and you've had to have boundaries because they will unintentionally shape you if they're part of your environment. So what we're saying is all of these create personal experiences over time that shape who we are and who we're becoming. If I look at my shape and this paradigm, this formation in my adolescence, the stories that I was telling myself is, you're rejected. Your dad left at age 11 because you're not good enough. And if you had been a better son, he would have stayed in your family. So intense insignificance, incompetence, and imprisonment. Being moved to a community I did not want to live in. I had no friends, and a bully terrorized me for a year. So intense 3 eyes showing up for me, affecting my stories in my adolescence, and no attachments whatsoever, total isolation, lots of habits around media and TV, and then finding my mom's magazines and developing a habit of escaping and soothing my stories by looking at that content. And that was my shape during my adolescence. Okay. So you can take an inventory, any phase of life and just ask, how am I being formed right now? How am I unintentionally being shaped? So what we want to do with this is we want to move to intentional shaping. Now it's no longer unconscious, it's conscious. Now there's intent behind it. And so how do we move towards that? Well, the first thing is, instead of stories, what we need is truth. And instead of habits, what we need are intentional practices. And instead of helpful or unhelpful attachments, what we need is true intimacy with God, self, and others in that order. And this becomes our new environment. And over time, we have what behavior science calls corrective experiences. Corrective experiences are one of the best things we can do to address the stories that we're telling ourselves. Because the stories that we're telling ourselves are often over core wounds from age 6 to 16. And that gets stuck in our limbic system. And what the Gottman's research shows is that it takes 20 corrective experiences to undo the damage from one of these experiences that get stuck in our limbic system. And so we need new experiences, corrective experiences, to tell ourselves different stories, to change the self-talk that's going on, to overcome that shame script that I'm insignificant, I'm incompetent, I'm in prison. Okay, all of this is coming from self-talk. Someone said it to us, we adopted it as our mantra, and we need corrective experiences from true intimacy with God, self, and others that is based on truth and healthy practices, spiritual disciplines that we're engaging in. So let me give you just a few examples of this. Like many of you, I have struggled with shame my whole life, and it comes from some core wounds between age 6 and 16. And it became mantras, it became scripts for me. And so I need to counter that with what's true. And what I did not find helpful is just to try and change my self-talk with more self-talk. I needed a voice that had more weight than my own. I needed an opinion, a message that was true from an authority that had more authority than me. Like, this is what I say about me. This is what I think my partner's saying about me. This is what I think our culture says about me. This is what I think my friends and family say about me. But I turn to my creator. What do you say about me? You created me. You breathed life into me. You brought me into this world. You, by faith, I believe, you have the highest authority. That you're the author of my story. You're writing this. You started this. You created me. That gives you authority that is higher than any other voice, because you're the author and you're writing my story. So what do you say about me? So I've got this new mantra. I've got this corrective experience. Every time shame shows up for me and I'm feeling insignificant, incompetent, or in prison, I turn to God first and I look at truth. And so I wrote this mantra. I call it a shame counter. And I do it in third person, as if this is God speaking over me, my creator, telling me these things. And I will say this out loud to myself, sometimes 20 times a day, to counter the old stories from those wounds. Roy, you are dearly loved and infinitely valuable. Why? Because of the fact that the creator of the universe imagined you before time began. He carefully crafted you while you were still in your mother's womb. He counted every hair on your head. He records every tear that you shed. He is involved in the details of your life because he cares for you like a loving father cares for a precious son. He breathed life into you on a specific day in human history. He selected both the generation that you live in and the geography that you live in. That is, he selected when and where he wanted you to live. Why? Because he has a plan for your life. Therefore, you are not a mistake. You are not insignificant. You are not incompetent. You are not imprisoned. Because he made you. And nothing you could do could ever change that fact. And so this is truth that I'm connecting with my creator and speaking over my life, because I want to intentionally shape the man I'm becoming. And I don't want to be in bondage to the old scripts and the old stories that are full of shame. Another thing I notice is, and I bet many of you can relate to this, I care a whole lot about my partner's approval. And so much of what I do is trying to earn her approval, win her approval, get some kind of recognition from her. And that is a legitimate need. That's a core relational need. But there are times in our relationship that we don't need to go to our partners to meet that legitimate relational need. They don't have the capacity to meet it. What do I do with that? I go to God, I go to myself, and I go to other healthy, intimate relationships to get that need for approval or acknowledgement or validation or comfort or hope or grace or whatever. It doesn't always have to be my partner. But instead of attachments that might be helpful or hurtful, it's intimate relationships with God, self, and healthy others that includes my spouse, but it's not exclusive to my spouse. And intimate meaning into me see I am vulnerable. I am transparent. I am in touch with what I need and I share that with them. Okay, so that's what we're talking about with intentional shaping here. Habits go from habits to practices, and practices can look like different things. Perhaps instead of medicating yourself with the chips and the ice cream and the junk food and the sweets, and you're becoming unintentionally shaped by that and becoming more and more unhealthy physically from that, perhaps the practice is I'm going to daily log my food and I'm going to exercise 5 times a week. And that can become a practice. Or for me, the practice I have to stay in the truth is daily scripture reading and meditating and journaling on what I read so that it is a new corrective experience for me in my limbic system. It's not just me reading it, but it's me experiencing it as if my creator is speaking to me and is providing a corrective experience over time that's shaping me because it's based on truth, not stories that I'm telling myself. And so that becomes a practice that is helping me become the person that I want to become. When it comes to your partner, a healthy practice could be daily check-ins. And if she's not in a place where she could receive that, you still write the check-in and you leave it in a journal and she can opt in anytime she wants. But you need that practice of intimacy, of vulnerability, of transparency. And so you do the practice not to appease her. It doesn't matter whether she opts in or not. I'm doing this because this is shaping intentionally the man I want to become. And another practice for me is teaching and teaching from a place of authenticity. Like what I'm doing right now is a practice that helps me connect to the truth when I prepare something like this. And I do it from a place of authenticity, not trying to get approval from other people. So look at how are you getting truth into you? And how are you replacing a lot of these false beliefs that you're telling yourself with truth? And what are the practices that you're engaging in that are intentionally shaping the person that you're becoming? And then finally, how are you connecting every day in an intimate way with God, self, and others in that flow, in that order? This will give you new experiences that are corrective to help address the stories that we've been telling ourselves.